All right, Derek, we've talked about these stretches, certain ones, but for you, who are you more interested in seeing, whether it's an individual player, a team that assembled something pretty good this offseason, and you are really intrigued of what they have done and you just want to check out that particular team or a player?
Yeah, well, I think not to throw too much Love Your Cousins way, but I think New York. I want to see how that new squad looks.
And that first game is at
wrong.
home.
I was like, you said something about love your cousins, and I was like, I misunderstood what you said.
Not too much love, D-Way. Yeah, I got you. I know what you said.
Anyway, I want to see how that squad looks.
And we get to see them early.
Get to see them early and get to see whether or not, the sum can be greater than the whole of the parts or whatever. I probably butchered that right there. But I just want to see, you've got a formula in NBA, 2 stars and supporting pieces. They're trying to buck that mold. Can they do that with elite? I don't call them role players, but like 1 star and a bunch of third options. I think if there's any team that's going to do it, it's in part them because they have so many people on below market contract, including now Brunson for a long time. I've expressed that it might be tough to keep that squad together, but those 2 contracts, both your cousin and Brunson, make that a little bit more feasible. But right now, they made a very aggressive move, and they're doing that. They gave up a lot of long-term equity to do so. Are they truly a title contender? I think it's going to be fun to watch.
All right, so New York first on the 12th in November, followed up with another home game, 2 home games out of the way first. That's going to be January 15th against New York. Then they go to New York on Wednesday, February 26th. And that's in New York, a Wednesday night ESPN game. The last one is in April 1st, April Fool's Day in New York. That's a Tuesday night for the New York Knicks. Kyle, how about you?
So for me, the Knicks games are absolutely important and are litmus test games. I'm not sure there's a true, this is circle the calendar. I need to be... Obviously, we are seeded for all these games, and I treat them all with various levels of importance. Leaving the first Boston meeting until Christmas is really interesting. Yeah. And that if you're looking at it from the Sixers perspective, that's pretty ideal in that you get, let's see, 27 games before you have to play them. So you get over a quarter of the season to iterate, to mess with lineups, to figure out your rotations behind the stars, to figure out one of the big questions we keep talking about is, does Joel play the backup minutes with Maxey, or is it Maxey and George and you try to be the best possible group without Joel on the floor? You get to go through all that experimentation for the quarter mark of the season. A lot of people believe the season only really starts on Christmas anyway. They're wrapped up in football. They're wrapped up in baseball playoffs, whatever it is. Well, now it's okay, you're being introduced to a lot of people who are jumping on the bandwagon, getting ready for basketball season on Christmas. That's really exciting for me because some of the difficult part in recent seasons, even as I've thought the team is better or had a better shot than the fans did, you're playing Boston week 2 or week 1 of the season, and Boston has just had much more continuity. They've been a better team than them pretty consistently. And so it's just they can't beat Boston and nothing matters, and the season's over a week or 2 into the season. So I like this just from a build-up and a narrative perspective of this becomes a true marquee game on Christmas. I'm very excited for that one.
To your point, in 2023-24, they played Boston in Game 7. They improved to 6-1. They played Milwaukee the opening night, lost by 1 point in that opening night. But again, if you all remember, they went on that nice stretch where the Sixers started off 8-1 after defeating Indiana. Yeah. And that Sunday night matchup in 22-23, they played Boston. I think it was week 2. It was opening night. They played Boston opening night, lost that one 126-117. So to your point, now we have the drama of 27 games before Boston, whether they're 20-7, 22-5, 21-6, whatever it might be. Both of those teams right there with each other at the top of the Atlantic Division, top of the Eastern Conference when they face off on Christmas. That's gonna be a fun one. They played the Clippers. We talked about them on November 6th. Sunday night matchup against the Clippers here, not nationally televised.
6 p.m. game against the Clippers on a Sunday.
And it's not on national
what
TV.
Is that? Now I need to cross-reference the Eagles schedule for that.
It's also early in the season, so you're like Kawhi should be, depending on how
It's not even on national TV. What do they? That one I don't get. For me, I wanted to see Orlando this year. I want to see how good they are. I want to see how much better
just
they've
as
gotten.
a team, not so much a matchup.
Well, even with the matchup though, while the Sixers had their advantage against them last season, they handled their business against them. I want to see year 2 improvement under Mosley, adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to that team, seeing if they take that next step in their development where we're giving them the credit of being a very good up-and-coming young team, putting them in that top 5, top 6 conversation. What does that look like against the Sixers in the event, Derek, that they have to face them in the postseason in one of those rounds, whether it's the first round or second round against the Orlando Magic? That's one that I have interest in. I've always been a fan of Jalen Suggs. He struggled in year 2, improved and came back in year 3 in a big way for where he is right now. So now that he has gotten that groove back, but does Franz Wagner, does he bounce back from the poor shooting that he had from long range last season? And what does Paolo do in year 3? He did not take a drop from year 1 to year 2. He improved. Does that drop come? Does it happen? Or does he just continue to have that arrow pointing up for Paolo Banchero? So as a new team that we focus on that you don't want to get stumped by, I want to see how they match up against the Orlando Magic this year. They have my attention from what they did last season.
No, the East is going to be very competitive and very fun to watch. Going back to Kyle's point about the Boston Christmas night game, I forget the time. It doesn't matter.
5 p.m. Christmas
day,
early evening.
If you remember back a couple of years ago, the COVID season before it got shortened, they beat the Bucks on Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. National TV. I think they were like 25-10 or something, playing really well. And then obviously the season ended up falling apart because of the pandemic. And then Simmons got injured. But regardless, that was a point where we were at, and we hadn't gotten quite to the doom and gloom era of the Joel Embiid era. Like everybody was still sort of like very excited and it looked like they were taking the next step, and they beat a good team on national TV and just lined up with a point where there were a lot more eyeballs on the NBA. And if they can come out strong, build some early season wins, get a good record going, and then win that game, I think the city could fall in love with the team pretty quickly. Not necessarily fall in love like they could 5 years ago, because stuff has happened in between there. People are going to be skeptical until they do it.
There's too much trauma that has happened.
A little bit of PTSD involved in being a fan of this team, but I think we can get a lot of excitement going at that time if they take care of business.
Yeah, I think the stretch in mid-January will be really, really interesting. Oklahoma City at home. Well, first at Orlando, OKC at home, Knicks at home, at Indiana, at Milwaukee, at Denver, then back home for Cleveland. That is a lot of good teams. A few, I think Denver would be considered a real contender. OKC, certainly a real contender. New York, a contender. Milwaukee, a contender. Indiana just went to, even if it was because of injuries and other factors, they went to the conference finals. They're on the rise. As you said, Devon, everyone's kind of looking at Orlando as a take the next step team this season. Those are all good teams. And so that, it might not be all on the road. You do get the Thunder and the Knicks at home as like a little sandwiched in between those road games there, but that will be a big stretch for them. It'll either be panic time, because that also dovetails with, hey, we're heading into the trade deadline. What do they need? I don't think this front office is reactionary in the way that I think the Brian Colangelo group was, where it's like, hey, you have a bad stretch leading into February, and then it turns into, we got to go get somebody. Someone's got to fill this hole. I think this group does not look at it that way. But if you're talking about taking the temperature, taking the pulse of the fan base, of the national media apparatus and whatnot, that is going to be a big stretch of the season for this group.
We all silly like the mayor.